Добрый день, дамы и господа, коллеги. Я Кирилл Токарев, шеф-редактор, ведущий телеканала РБК, благодаря которому, уверен, многие сейчас и смотрят нашу трансляцию. Рад приветствовать вас на сессии «Инвестиции в будущее. Экономика глобального города». Ну что же, об этом много говорилось в ходе этого форума, это известно в принципе. Итак, всем города...
Cities are major players in global economic transformation because they concentrate huge financial, economic, human resources. That's where new business models come into life. It is the major cities that had to face the coronavirus shock. They had to restart businesses. They suffered most as a result of the pandemic. Today we're going to talk about this topic, the contribution of business to economic recovery, the role of the state, how it's going to affect business models, following what we have unfortunately seen over the last few years, the role of cities in all these processes, and many other topics. I'm not going to waste our time. Our panelists, Alexander Lomakin, First Deputy Minister of Construction and Utilities of Russia, Vladimir Yefimov, Deputy Moscow Mayor for Property Relations and Economic Policy. We're going to be joined soon by Minister of Economic Development of the Russian Federation, Maxim Reshetnikov. Also, online, new world, new reality. We have our Bursa Mayor Alnur Aktash and Geoffroy Boulard, Deputy Chairman of Greater Paris Metropolis for Digitalization and External Communication. I would like to start with the representatives of the Mayor's Office, the city which was the first to face the shock of the coronavirus pandemic. I think your response was more than robust. I think you've managed to retain the investment flow in the cities, and recently the Industrial Development Index, which was released recently, it shows that the situation is fairly well in Moscow. The economic policy, economic model is one of the most effective globally. So the question is when they're going to come for our goodies. So if you want, you can answer this question. Last year, I think we started this discussion. Is it? Does the Moscow model lend itself to scaling? Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Moscow was really one of the first to face the new COVID-19 and was one of the first to react with means of restrictions. There is no doubt that they had negative impact on business. But you are right to say that in terms of macroeconomic indicator, we managed to finish the year positively. And when I say positively, I mean that we managed to keep positive dynamics there. We see similar trends this year. Of course, it's not correct to compare this year to the previous year, because this year we had some periods of the most strict restrictions. So if you compare this year with the previous year, you will not get the right picture. But frankly speaking, right now, we look quite good, even in terms of our forecasts for 2021 made in 2019. We still have a positive accumulated effect. And you ask the question why. You say everything is good in Moscow. And I believe that it's a phrase which you hear everywhere. If everything is good and you're rich, then everything is fine. But any well-being is the result of long and well-coordinated efforts. If you have a look at our budget, you will see that significant changes were made over the last 10 years. If you have a look at our economic situation, you will see that there are significant changes there as well. Let me tell you what I mean. If you take the situation in 2000, for example. In 2008 and 2010, Moscow received quite a lot of money from the oil and gas sector, and the share of income from oil and gas sector was from 17 to 18% for Moscow. And in the structure of budget of the city of Moscow, the income tax was so that it accounted for about 50% of the budget. And the personal income tax was about 40%. The share of income tax is about 35% now, but the share of personal income tax is about 50% now. And there's another important rule. It happened not on its own. It happened thanks to the introduction of new taxation policy. A big part of money were redistributed thanks to the changes. And currently, we are in comparable conditions when we not receive about 300 billion rubles, which are now spent in other regions of Russia. Thanks to the changes of taxation regulation, we managed to have positive dynamics, and we managed to make sure that our economic situation is positive despite the pandemics, and it happened thanks to structural changes of how the budget was used. Our investment strategy was dramatically changed. The share of investment increased by 2 times, and currently it accounts for 35 to 40%. And speaking about special purpose investment programs aimed at the improvement of economics in general. We did it all in 2011. So thanks to the changes of the legislation I spoke about, the growth of the budget till the middle of 2016 was lower than inflation rate, lower than in other regions of Russia, and lower than the growth of the federal budget. But only thanks, starting with 2016, we started to have advanced progress. Currently, our indicators of the investment growth are higher on average than in Russia. We started an investment sector which was a driving force for the attraction of additional investment. If you take 1 ruble of our investment, you will see that we have 3 rubles of private investment. We significantly increased the subway network. Each subway station became a driving force where private investment projects started to develop. We created beneficial conditions for land use, and we provide land use for the development of industrial facilities. In addition to that, we create public spaces. Public spaces lead to the formation of new service-related business companies. We see that financial sector, service sector, social sector grow significantly, which is an integral part of large cities of the world. And you were right to say that the industrial facilities are also growing. All in all, it is a testimony to the fact that any large city lives thanks to the fact that service sector actively develops. A key thing related to industry is, of course, the introduction of innovations. And of course, our companies actively introduce innovations. There are some good examples. We know Azelka plant, for example. It doesn't work, but in the facilities of that plant, Renault company works. And it produces the same amount of cars, but there are 5 times less people, and it occupies 2.5 less area. So that is all thanks to innovation. That was how we managed to go through the pandemic year successfully. The innovations helped to diversify the economy of the city. Now we are facing another difficult stage, and unfortunately now we have to introduce additional means of restrictions, but we are carefully tracking the changes in the economy, and of course we will take specific solutions that will have companies overcome hardships. But here I would like to say that many businessmen and entrepreneurship try to abuse the public opinion, like restaurators, for example, who spoke about the fact that their income decreased by 80%. I don't know where they took the figures from. Their income really decreased, but the decrease was by 15 or 20%, and actually today it is higher than the average annual income of the previous year, so you have to be careful when you work with figures. Thank you very much. We will speak about the accuracy and we will speak about the industry in the future, but in the first part of our conversation it's necessary to be on time, so I would like to give the mic to Stefano Marco, coordinator from OECD. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Расскажите, да, все слышно, отлично.
Yes. Could you please tell us about the strategies and programs that are developed by the government of Moscow contributed to the engagement of private sector in the economy of the city? What indicators determine success of the cities related to sustainable development goals, and how should the cities work with private sector in general?
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure being here today. We have been working as a CD with the City of Moscow for almost 2 years now on a program called the Territorial Approach to the SDGs, where we have been analyzing how sustainability and how the Sustainable Development Goals can be a tool for the city to work with the private sector. So we've been seeing first that the City of Moscow is mainstreaming the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations in local public action. In particular, the city is really using the Sustainable Development Goals to see as a checklist to assess and highlight the contribution of the various local development programs and initiatives to sustainable development. The city has 3 main local development strategies that is using to promote sustainability. One is the Master Plan 2010-2035. Another one is the Investment Strategy 2025. And finally, there is the Smart City 2030. So the idea of this program, of this collaboration with the City of Moscow, is to understand how the Sustainable Development Goal can be also a tool to connect these 3 strategies and to include sustainability, to strengthen the sustainability dimension of these 3 strategies. We have been developing an indicator framework to measure the progress of the City of Moscow towards sustainable development. And what we saw is that we use OECD indicator and also 18 city-specific indicators that were provided by the City of Moscow. We can see that in terms of sustainable development goals, the main strengths of the city are in particular related to education. That is one is where the city is performing beyond the OECD average. Decent work, industry, and innovation. These are really 3 drivers of sustainable development for the city. We also saw that there are still some challenges that we are working on with the city to address, and one is sustainable consumption, environmental protection, and institutions, so SDG 16. So this is what we came out with our indicator framework. And going back to the focus of your question, so the role of the private sector, we see that the private sector is really playing a key role in the city of Moscow. 2/3 of the capital investment in Moscow comes from the private sector. We saw that more and more the private companies are working towards sustainability, towards the SDGs, and they play a key role in sustainability projects in the city. And the investment strategy 2015 that the city has developed can be really a driver to include more and more the private sector and to work on sustainability with the private sector. As OECD, we are providing some guidance on how local government in general, not only Moscow, but all the cities and the regions that are part of our program on the territorial approach to the SDGs can use this tool of the Sustainable Development Goals to strengthen partnership on specific sustainability projects with the private sector. One of the first recommendations is to create awareness about the SDGs among the local businesses, because in particular the small and medium-sized enterprises sometimes are working on sustainability, but they are not really aware of the SDGs. So there is a need for the public government to create awareness on the SDGs. The second one is to provide space for networking, coordination, and platform for sharing good practice. And again, this is in particular relevant for the small and medium-sized enterprises because they are very small and sometimes they cannot have a big impact if they don't work together. So it's useful if the local government provide this space for collaboration. The third one is the risk investment in innovative product and markets towards sustainability. So here there is really an opportunity for the city to work and to provide some support to companies to work on innovative projects towards sustainability. And finally, the fourth point is the importance of public procurement that can be a very powerful tool to achieve social and environmental outcomes. So here the recommendation is that local government can include some sustainability criteria when providing, when using public procurement for their action. So these are some reflection and that we are developing with the City of Moscow. We'll continue. We are going to launch very soon the report by September. So we invite all of you to participate in this event. And I really would like to thank the Deputy Mayor and all the Department of Investment, Public Investment of the City of Moscow that has been working with us for these 2 years.
Спасибо, господин Марта.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Marta. We will continue. There are many ambitious tasks before the ministry, but two key ones, please correct me if I'm wrong, raising investments into the industry. Moscow is on the right track, and territorial development is the second priority. It's a moot point, but I think Moscow has been equally successful. What are the new mechanisms being developed by the ministry? What needs to be done in order to speed up and to step up investments and maybe to scale up the territorial development models being used by Moscow and other cities, which serve as example to others? Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the question. I would like to welcome everybody once again. I think it's a very important event. As I said this morning, it's important that we manage to get together in this composition. Unfortunately, not everybody could make it here, but we are discussing serious issues. We have an ambitious task ahead of ourselves, building up to 1 billion square meters of housing until the year 2030 across the country. Housing not only in terms of the number of square meters, but also we're talking about quality. So we're talking about housing that has all supportive infrastructure, engineering, social, transport, etc. To a great extent, this goal is similar to what Moscow has been doing as part of their housing stock renovation program. This is all being scaled up to cover all other regions. Unlike Moscow, unfortunately, not all regions enjoy similar economic situation. So at the federal level, a set of measures, support measures, economic support measures was developed for the regions. Infrastructural menu, we call it. It's an ability to take out infrastructural loans. You can raise funds through infrastructural bonds. You can tap into National Welfare Fund. There are some other infrastructural tools which are made available, but the ones I've listed are the key ones. And using these tools by the regions would allow regions to finance the construction of infrastructural projects, and this in turn would boost the inflow of private investments. It was said 1 ruble of budget funds generate several rubles from private sources. This program is underway, is being implemented. We are now vetting applications from different regions. Regions have been very responsive to this program. They've been sending their applications. To answer your second question, December last year, at the federal level, a law was passed on integrated territorial development. This is the law which makes it possible to take a territory and view its development from the standpoint of housing development, transport infrastructure development, social infrastructure development. So by marrying these two instruments, integrated development and the financial menu instrument, this would allow regions to develop, to thrive, to raise private funds, to build housing stock, to create jobs. The most important thing is for them to be able to create comfortable, livable environment for people. Also, we shouldn't be limited to regions, individual regions. The agglomerations, when, for example, two cities or two towns nearby, they create an agglomeration. And such agglomeration creates a synergy effect. Administrative borders are notional. So oftentimes people reside in one town and work in another town. So if we combine those towns into an agglomeration by using their infrastructural menu, using the existing laws, we can promote economic development in different regions or cities. Another question, if I may. Clearly, the federal authorities are doing a lot to develop territories, to raise investments locally. Are federal programs enough? To put it in simple terms, many people say that the issue lies with the local authorities, with the municipal authorities, because some people want to borrow and to use better practices, best practices, like in Moscow. In other places, it's not the case. Yes, of course, there are problems locally. Of course, numerous regional and local authorities have doubts because speaking about infrastructural menu, of course, clearly we're talking borrowed funds, even though those are federal funds to be channeled to the regions, but those are all borrowed funds. So each project needs to be carefully reviewed, vetted in terms of its feasibility and recuperability of expenditures. Just like with the housing stock renovation program. Originally, there was a strong pushback by some Muscovites. Others were in doubt, but later on became clear that it was a good thing to do. It was very useful. And the same happens with the regions. Of course, they're doubting people, but soon enough, they will change their mind. Well, let us hope. 3 major projects were launched during the pandemic: industrial neighborhoods, the business support program, proper green bonds, a high-profile. It may be mind-boggling, green bonds in the pandemic times. So how did you manage to make them a success? Well, industrial quarters or industrial neighborhoods, this is a program of the comprehensive territorial development. We see the city has a huge potential, over 2,000 hectares and 33 million square meters of real estate. That would spur investments. It would spur economic development in the city. Speaking about green bonds, they came as a result of the tough year we had last year because there was shortfalls in our revenues. We didn't generate as much profit as expected, but we need to look at the need for a coherence. We made a promise that we would implement projects, infrastructural projects, road projects, and if we fail to implement those projects, it would be impossible to jumpstart private investments. This year, we don't have sufficient resources, so we made a tough decision, but a decision that we had to make. We tapped into borrowings through green bonds. We use green bonds proceeds to finance metro construction. So 70 billion rubles worth of green bonds have been placed, and it's one of the sustainable development goals Our OECD partners spoke about it. We are working closely with the OECD. They advise us on how we need to change our policies in this regard. I'm sure that all these projects that we are talking about now, they will have a positive economic effect. And finally, business support measure. It was a forced measure in response to the restrictions we imposed. Of course, we're reluctant to introduce those measures but for us, the throughput of our healthcare system is the main indicators, the main gauge, main factor in our decision making. If we compare ourselves to other major cities, the second wave, we fared fairly well because we had built up a very high throughput capacity at our clinics. Nowadays, we are not introducing strict measures, even though the situation is worse. As I said, Alinur Aktash is with us. Bursa, your town, is focusing on raising investments quite successfully. What mechanisms are you using? How do you incentivize investors? What are the key priority and the most popular sectors of the economy among your private investors? Thank you.
Sesim geliyor herhalde. Evet. Öncelikle
First of all, I would like to welcome all participants of the Moscow Urban Forum from the most beautiful town in Turkey, Bursa. I hope that there will be useful results achieved as a result of the forum, and I would like to wish everybody good health. A few words about Bursa. Very briefly,
Şimdi. Katılımcılar adını
dear participants,
Anadolu'ya yaslanan Bursa, Bitinya, Roma, Bizans, Selçuklu ve Osmanlı Devleti'ne
Bursa is an important city for Turkey. It's the first capital city in the Ottoman Empire. It's a city that has the vestiges of all civilizations. More than 3 million people live in Bursa. The city opens great opportunities due to its strong economy. We are in the moderate climate zone with very strong agricultural areas. We have a long time historic legacy. We're at the crossroad of Europe and Asia, one of the key transport hubs of Turkey. Land, railway, air. The city has always been attractive to tourists, to visitors. It was on the Silk Road. Since the 14th century, it's become one of the key trade centers. We have various trade centers, shopping centers. Bursa is still one of the hearts of Turkey. Bursa is well known for its sites which have been made on the UNESCO World Heritage List. We're known for our thermal spas, wintertime sports, summertime sports, and tourism. We're a member of 16 international organizations. You can see them on the slide. For example, International Museums Union, International Union of Research and Development Organizations. We have representatives of 25 various countries. We have consulates from 26 countries. We started with Germany, but we continued with Belarus, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, China. So 25 countries are present, and we have sister relationships with 23 cities of the world. As I said, we have well-developed agriculture, tourism. We are developing major transport projects. Gebze Organzi Izmir highway project was completed. We are fairly close to Istanbul, 2 hours by car. Numerous transport projects have been completed. North Marmaris Highway. Bursa, one of the key drivers of Bursa's development is its proximity to the sea. We can use numerous seaports on the Sea of Marmara. 7 seaports we have access to. We develop such areas as automotive industry, clothing, children clothing, textile, chemical industry, plastic industry, food industry, and other industries. According to some data, it is the 3rd largest producer in Turkey of all the cities in Turkey. Our main investors are Germany, France, and Italy. Here you can see these industries where our foreign investors have investments in automotive industry, 56%, also chemical industry, transport, transit. We know that Bursa is one of the leading automotive centers in Turkey. We have Fiat, Renault, Peugeot, Cobra, and other automotive plants operating in Bursa. Bursa is also one of the major producers of spare parts for cars. Textile is another important area. We export a lot of products. produced in Bursa. We have a lot of major textile factories. Bursa is actively developing its engineering, metals industry. It was in Bursa historically, so 12% of Bursa's exports is taken up by metals. And a lot of well-known brands are domiciled in Bursa. Forestry is another area, another segment we develop. Speaking about agriculture, over 142,000 hectares of arable land, watered arable land, and we produce a lot of foodstuffs. We produce a lot of food products in Bursa. In terms of the exports, it's the second largest city in Turkey. In 2020, more than $13 billion worth of products were exported. This, of course, bolstered our infrastructure and promoted our economic development, spurred our economic development. These are the key economic partners of Bursa: Germany, France, and Italy, the three major economic partners. Unfortunately, you're running out of time. Yes, thank you. I'm wrapping up. Speaking about our projects, I would like to say that we have an important project, a thermal facility, thermal complex. We offer very good conditions to investors. Another important project has something to do with tourism. As well as a marina project, a berthing station for yachts, very good terms and conditions. We would like to announce another interesting project, Lodach winter sports facility. We plan to build a Congress hall there. Lodach can be used year-round, so it's a place for year-round tourism. There are also several projects of landscaping and beautification in the city, and they're also open to external investors. They're called Odoluk. I have to end here. Thank you very much for inviting. Thank you, all participants. We will continue. Mr. Bular, what's the role of private investors and investments in the life of larger Paris? Any recipes you can share with us?
Monsieur le ministre de l'économie, cher Maxime Rechnikov, Monsieur le ministre.
Dear Mr. Minister of Economic Development, Maxime Reshetnikov, dear First Deputy Moscow Mayor, Deputy Minister Mr. Lomakin, and dear Mr. Yefimov, Deputy Mayor of Moscow, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the representative of the French government, which is involved in the Greater Paris project, I would like to say that we are driving this project, delivering on this project. There's a lot of enthusiasm. Unfortunately, for sanitary reasons you're aware of, we couldn't make it to your forum in person, unfortunately. So I have to speak remotely, but still I would like to recall that our Greater Paris metropolis enjoys very close ties with Moscow. The last 2 years, we made 2 trips to Moscow. March 2019, we had exchange of experience, and our chairman, Mr. Ollier, also participated in Moscow Urban Forum in July, and we launched a joint development program with Moscow Mayor Sobyanin, and it was witnessed by other representatives from France and Russia. In addition, we were present. We attended St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. We took part in a roundtable together with Maxim Reshetnikov, Minister of Economic Development of the Russian Federation. Speaking about the role of private investments in the larger Paris metropolis, so there are 7.2 million residents, over 100 communities cooperating with our mayor's office, and that represent the territory of our region. We launched a major important project called Greater Paris Metropolis. That project constitutes a competition, a call for action in the urban development area. The authorities, French authorities, held different competitions, calls for action, bids inviting private companies who could present their private projects. A few numbers: 10 billion euro of investments. That's what we raised, and this allowed us to beautify numerous areas. 80,000 jobs were created as a result of that, as a result of our project. That's the total number. In addition, last year, our chairman, Ollier, was re-elected, and he launched a 3rd stage of major calls for action and bids for the territorial development. And important work is being carried out in the industrial areas, in the residential areas. We are cooperating with the city of Moscow, and for example, in the project Moscow Neighborhoods, Mr. Yefimov talked about this. I would like to remind you that we have a high density of population in our metropolis, and our project has a 3rd goal, that is the improvement and beautification of our railway stations and transport hubs. We are talking about 79 metro stops, and we need to upgrade our metro lines. This will be part of the Greater Paris tomorrow. In addition, Greater Paris Metropolis, we managed to mobilize private investments thanks to the creation of special economic zones. We are talking about investments into 200 different projects. For example, we have a group that is designing and constructing different sports facilities. They are renovating Stade de France, Stadium of France. We are building an international aquatic center as part of the preparation for 2024 Olympic Games. And Mr. Ollier, in the framework of these activities, signed several projects, agreements with the city of Moscow on the exchange of best practices. In particular, we are working with Moscow in brownfield redevelopment projects. Private investments are being mobilized in scale. We are trying to use private investments to improve living standards of our residents, to improve ecology, and there's a goal to switch to e-mobility and cars with zero emissions. Speaking about emissions, we have respective projects, we have laws that constantly reduce lower CO2 emission limits. Every year, our limits are becoming more and more stringent, but it's a major problem because, our residents still have to breathe dirty air. A special neighborhood is being built in the district where I was mayor, and office buildings are being built, total area of 140,000 square meters. It will house retail, shops, offices. So private investments are at the heart of our urban development strategy. Thank you. Mr. Boulard, thank you so much. Actually, I would like to get back to you. I know there are no uniform recipes. Maybe work hard, think with your head, look beyond the horizon. But can we apply Moscow's recipes to other cities of our rich country? Any universal recipes? Basically, if you do it once, you do it twice, you do it thrice, and it works every time. Speaking about recipes that can be used by all cities or most cities, the recipe is investments into transport infrastructure and into public spaces. These investments, they will generate additional private investments. They will spur the private sector development. And most importantly, they would create comfortable conditions for residents, would make people want to stay in those places. Thank you. Alexander Nikolaevich, have you seen any progress in recent years? The urban space development outside of Moscow, in mid-sized cities and towns. Any progress? Or do we have a number of exemplar cities and the rest is somewhere far behind?
The situations can be different, but the fact is that the progress is in the mindset. The progress is that all the regions of Russia are now thinking about it. They set corresponding tasks, and all the regions basically understand that the creation of a comfortable environment with integrated development, comfortable living conditions are one of the main recipes for economic and investment development. Thank you. So Maxim Reshetnikov managed to join us. Hello, thank you for finding time. I know that you are busy, so without any further ado, I know that you are working on the roadmap to attract investment. What is the role of large cities there? And what tools, as you think, should be used by large cities to attract investment as fast as possible in difficult times, difficult for Russia and the whole world? Hello. Hello, dear colleagues and dear friends. Unfortunately, I can't be present at Moscow Urban Forum. It's a great platform for the development of new ideas. Things discussed at Moscow Urban Forum are relevant for the start of a new investment cycle. And let me explain why. Right now, a large set of tools is being implemented for the support of investments. Corresponding agreements were introduced last year. There are budget infrastructural loans, restructurization of the regional debts, and so on. At the same time, it's very important for us to understand not only what resources we have, but what particular investment we are going to have and where will the investment go to. Right now, we have a package of good industrial projects. They served as the basis for the first agreements aimed at investment in gas, chemicals, petrochemicals, oil refinery, and so on. It's a good and industrial basis of economy which ensures economic growth and certain level of investment. At the same time, if we have a look at this situation, we will understand that if we go this way, people will not see it, first of all. Large projects have a good impact on GDP and macroeconomic indicators, but every person will not see the results of such projects. And only when they see social expenditures, then they will perhaps see it. And we need to make sure that our investments are smarter. What do I mean? I mean that industrial investments should be accompanied with investments into roads, water reservoirs, railroads, airports, and so on. So we need to make sure that there are investments in the cities, in comprehensive development of the territories, in the better environment of the city, more advanced territories of the city. We also need new spheres of investments in intellectual property and other types of assets. These are some spheres which we do not recognize as something significant, but it shouldn't be so. According to the results of the first quarter of this year, we see that there are some qualitative changes in the structure of investment. For example, there are significant factors that led to it. And I believe that changes will help us reach the targets, 70% of the level of 2020. So what is being discussed today is truly important. We do create certain instruments and tools, but we have to make sure that the tools come hand in hand with the changes of the investment structure. I started to talk to you about the promotion of capital investment. It was aimed at large projects first, but this Act will be changed. It will be amended, and thanks to the amendments, it will be easier to make agreements in the sphere of services, tourism, and comprehensive development of the cities. We try to expand such tools, budget and infrastructural loans, billions of rubles till 2030. The rules of distribution were announced. All the regions will be able to participate in the distribution of funds, and that is one more area of focus where we describe particularly the areas where investments can be made, like industrial, manufacturing sector, a large comprehensive development of the city, construction projects, advanced territories. Traditionally, we dealt with capital investments, but we created conditions for the development of non-material assets. Let me give you an example. ESG financing, for example. There's a document developed by us together with the entrepreneurs and other regions of Russia about taxonomy of green projects. It will be a driving force to the development of investment projects. We also start the mechanism of experimental and legal regimes. The legislation is prepared, so We will introduce changes to the laws to introduce unmanned taxis in the cities, deliveries of cargo with drones, large data or big data processing. We have a really vast area of activity. At the end of the day, we need to create conditions for investments for large cities, industrial centers, and rural areas too. One more thing, which is always important to remember when we say Moscow Urban Forum, we start to compare the agglomerations of large cities and rural areas. I believe that we have to stay from the very beginning. We do not support the agglomeration. We support points of growth no matter where they are. Just agglomeration is a big point of growth. But let's be frank, there are large cities that do not have necessary dynamics of development, management teams, a strategy of development. We do have experience of Moscow, Kazan, St. Petersburg, and other large cities. We all see what happens there. This is what we can see really well. But on the other hand, there are large cities which do not have such dynamics, which do not use all the opportunities they have. But on the other hand, there are rural areas, remote areas, which actively develop tourism, for example, agriculture, food processing. They are also points of growth. So our tools have to take into account that such growth should be supported too. Only if you support efficient regions, settlements, and towns, you can ensure advanced development of Russia. That is the task set by the President of Russia. That was my comment. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Yeah, we do have a lot of questions, but unfortunately the time is limited. Thank you for your time. We have 30 seconds left. I love to draw conclusions, but maybe Mr. Yefimov, you could wrap up and give advice to the mayors of other cities and towns and people watching us online. I can only repeat the main idea. As far as development of a city is concerned, or any settlement is concerned, it's necessary to support investment. We spoke about different tools for that, and the government offers a lot of opportunities. There are changes in strategies and approaches of the regions. We see that positive dynamic is here. So let's work, work, and work. I hope that instruments will be demanded. Thank you, Mr. Yefimov. Thank you, Alexander. I thank everyone watching us online. Good luck to you and stay healthy.